Hey friends, welcome to the channel. So here's another interesting story of Deku. What if Deku was overpowered ice prodigy? I give full credits to authors in the starting of the video. If you want to see more stuff like this, then please subscribe to the channel and also do check the talented author of this captivating story. The Ice Hero Boreas by Riddler 2012. Please search it on google.so. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The start of a new adventure. Come on mom, stop messing with my hair, you know how it is. You are not going to fix it, said a white-haired boy wearing gray school pants and a gray jersey with maroon lines on the collar and wrist regions with a white shirt underneath. Of course he was also wearing a scarf and gloves since he never really left the house without them. He was getting ready for the UA entrance exam with some last-minute touch-ups on his outfit, and so his mom chose that time to fuss over his hair. I know honey, it's just that I am so nervous. I mean, UA is the best hero school in Japan after all, she said, still trying to mess with his hair. It's going to be okay mom, I haven't been training like crazy my entire life just so that I can go over there and fail, plus you are making me more nervous than I already am, and I told you to be careful with having your hands too close to my hair or face. Even if you are using a comb and not touching me directly, it's still dangerous, he said, pushing her hands away. Yeah, I know, but I still can't believe my baby is going to be going to the same school as All Might. I still remember when the only thing we were worried about was when your quirk is going to manifest, and now I have to worry about tripping over ice everywhere I go, she said with a teasing smile. Hey, that's not fair. You know that the only places that ever really get a buildup of ice are the clearing I train on, the chair I use to sit in my room, which all have nothing to do with you. Plus it's not my fault that my quirk is so potent that I am basically a walking fridge, he said with a laugh. Anyway, I would love to chat with you some more mom, but I have got to go. Okay honey, but please be careful. You know how dangerous and unstable your quirk can be, especially if you experience strong emotions, she said with worry in her eyes. Yeah mom, you don't ever have to remind me about that. Trust me, I know more than most how dangerous quirks can be, he said with a downtrodden expression. When she heard him say that, she regretted even saying that. She of all people knew how many precautions he took to prevent anything like that from ever happening again, but she also knew how much it haunted him. She didn't say it, but she knew that he hardly slept due to nightmares about that day and that he had never forgiven himself. She really didn't know what she could say to make him feel better, and so she decided to change the subject. After that little interchange, the mood was down, but they managed to forget about all that depressing business and have a nice chat, and the time finally came for him to leave, and so he said goodbye to his grandfather, who was still in bed due to the fact that these past couple of years it seems like his age had been getting to him. When he got there, he was one of the last people to arrive due to the fact that his grandfather's house was so far from UA, and because of him being so late, the frequency of people coming in through the door had decreased drastically, and so every time someone entered, all eyes were on them. When all those eyes got on him, he definitely got nervous, but he didn't show and he just sat down. He wasn't used to so many people due to the fact that after he started training with his quirk, he stopped going to crowded places because he was scared that someone would accidentally touch an exposed part of his skin and be frozen. He had been working on trying to control that, but at the moment it seemed like that was a pipe dream, seeing as he couldn't increase his body temperature, and besides there was no way for him to confirm if people can touch him without putting them in danger. They got the breakdown of what they were supposed to do from Present Mike, and during Present Mike's speech there wasn't really any interruptions except for one guy who seemed to be way too tightly wound. Izuku was standing in front of the gate ready to go in. He was kind of nervous being cramped around so many people, but that was why he had worn his shinobi shozoku to make sure that no one touches him. Before the gates opened, he took out a white katana hilt with a white guard and what seemed to be a ribbon attached to the end. Ever since he had been training with making weapons, he had decided that he liked it better when he made a katana for it to have an actual hilt, and so he had started to carry one around, and when he went into battle he would just produce a blade on the hilt. Seeing as it seemed like the action was about to start, he got to it. A blade started growing from the end of the hilt until it looked like he was holding a beautiful katana with a thin blue blade. After he summoned his weapon, it took a little bit, and then Present Mike finally said go, and immediately after he set off while the others were still confused because there was no countdown. He may have been nervous in the morning, but now he was in battle, and he had been in many battles before during his training in the dojo and competitions, and he had learned that decisiveness was one of the best qualities to have during a battle. He had slowly built his warrior's instincts over the years, and now he no longer hesitated, and so immediately when he ran into a one-pointer robot, he dodged its initial strike and proceeded to cut it in half. He had been undergoing ninja training for years, and during that time he had learned to be efficient in his takedowns, and another thing he had learned was to work from the shadows, and so he had decided to not stand out at all during this exam and to just pass. He continued cutting down robots left and right without any trouble at all really, and the best indication of that was the fact that he hadn't had to use any serious move at all against the robots. He was incredibly bored with such simple opponents, but it couldn't really be helped. So far he had been in his own little world, not really paying any attention to any of the other contestants, but just as he had finished slicing another robot, he heard a commotion and turned in that direction only to see a giant robot. He started running towards it so that he could fight it and alleviate his boredom, but he remembered that he was supposed to be laying low, and so he was about to turn back when he saw a girl trapped under the rubble. He immediately went after the girl to try and save her. He saw that the robot was still far enough that he could get her out. When he got there, he didn't say anything and just proceeded to lift the rubble a little bit so that the girl could get her feet out. It was heavy but he was able to get her feet out, and he proceeded to carry her bridal style and immediately run off. It seemed he had gotten her out in the nick of time, because a couple of seconds after they ran off, the robot was at the rocks. A little bit after they ran off, President Mike announced the end of the exam, and the robot stopped moving. After he saw that, he finally relaxed and looked down at his passenger. "Are you okay?" he asked while walking towards the old lady who had appeared and started healing people. He was trying not to look at her because during the entire ordeal adrenaline had made him forget that he is kind of scared of girls. "Yeah, I am okay, thanks for saving me." After he dropped her off, he decided that his job was done and he left. "Now that is what I call heroism," said an emancipated blonde man while looking at the screen after they had seen the ninja kid rescue the girl. Yes, that was very impressive, but did any of you see what his quirk was?" asked a bear, dog, rat thing who just so happened to be the principal. "He seemed to be using some kind of sword. Maybe he can generate swords," said another teacher. "Well, whatever he case, I am sure we can all agree that was very heroic. To put his life on the line to save his fellow examinee is very admirable," said the principal. "Yes, that it is," said the emancipated man looking at the screen with a critical eye. "Izuku honey, your letter is here," his mom said after barging into his room. He took the letter from her and he was about to open it when he decided to do it alone. He wasn't super scared that he failed, but there was a chance, and so he decided to check it alone first. His mother respected his wishes and stood outside the door. "No," she heard. "Izuku, what happened? Did you fail?" she asked after barging in. "No, I got first place in the practical," he said with anime tears rolling down his face. "Oh, that's great, but why did you scream?" "I am a ninja, mom, I am supposed to not stand out," he said while pacing around the room. After he said that, she burst out laughing from the sheer ridiculousness of his reaction, but she also thought it was incredibly cute how into his little ninja thing he was. "But honey, I thought you wanted to be like All Might. How is that going to happen if you don't stand out?" she asked with an innocent smile. "Oh no," he said while putting his hands on his head. "What am I going to do? Do I follow the way of the shinobi or do I become the #1 hero?" he said, panicking. She was barely holding back her laughter. "Oh, I know I'll still save people," with a smile, "but I'll try to be less popular, maybe #2. he said, tilting his head to the side. "No one remembers #2, right, Mom?" he asked. After he said that, she burst out laughing again. "Don't worry, my little ninja, I am sure your cover won't be blown," she said after calming down. "Class 1, come on, where are you?" he said to himself as he was walking around. Today was his first day and right now he was looking for his class. "Oh, found it," he said when he came across a huge door. He opened it and when he got inside, all eyes immediately fell on him. "Deku," he heard, and he looked towards the source of the sound to see his old friend. "Kachan, so you made it as well?" he said while looking at his old friend Katsuki Bakugo. Just as Bakugo was about to respond, the girl he saved during the exam cut in. "Thank you for saving me. My name is Ochako Uraraka, by the way. Nice to officially meet you," she said while walking towards him. "Yeah, nice to meet you too," he said, and just as he was about to offer his name, the teacher showed up. He immediately told them to go outside. When they got outside, he used Bakugo to explain his quirk apprehension test, where they would be performing some basic fitness tests using their quirks, but Izuku decided not to use his quirk because he didn't see any reason to. The teacher had told them he would expel the one who came in last, but he was pretty sure he would be able to beat a vast majority of them with just his ninja training, plus it would keep him on the average side of the class, which is exactly what he wanted. They did all the exercises, and at the end he was in number 10, which made sense since there was no area where he had a standout performance. The last place was a guy called Mineta, but the teacher informed them that he had been kidding. "Before I go, Midoriya, why didn't you use your quirk today?" the teacher asked with his usual lazy expression. "I didn't see any reason to," he said in a way that made it seem like the most obvious thing in the world. His response pissed off the people that had used their quirks and were still below him, but they decided that he meant that his quirk would not have been useful in any of the events. "Well, okay then," Aizawa said, and then he left. He picked up his syllabus and was leaving when he was stopped by someone. When he turned back to see who it was, he saw the guy he had seen arguing with Kachan when he got to class that morning. Speaking of Kachan, they hadn't really had a chance to talk, but he supposed it couldn't be helped. They had been friends long ago, but not anymore. "Hey, I saw you talking to Bakugo. Did you know each other beforehand?" he asked while they kept walking to the gate. "Yeah, we went to the same kindergarten," he said, and after that they continued talking with Lita introducing himself, and then they talked about Mr. Aizawa lying about the test. While they were walking, the girl he saved joined them, and they had a misunderstanding about his name due to what Kachan said, but after it was sorted out they all left together, and he had to admit it felt nice since it had been so long since he had friends. "Are you okay, Uraraka?" he asked. He had just gotten her out of the way of Bakugo's explosion. He knew that Bakugo would come for him due to their shared history, but damn it, he couldn't believe that they were teamed up against him for this thing. This sucked, and this day had really been going so well. He had met All Might and he had gotten his chance to try out his costume. His costume was pretty simple, seeing as it was a blue variant of what he wore during the exam, but it was designed to make it easier to use his quirk. "Yeah, I am fine," she said as she got up. "Well, let's go, Deku, let's see which one of us is better," Bakugo said as he moved in with a right hook, but Midoriya easily saw through it as it was extremely telegraphed, and he dodged to Bakugo's left and landed a punch on his left kidney. "Uraraka, go find the bomb, I'll take care of him," he said as he looked on to Bakugo, who was getting up. "Are you sure? He seems really tough." "No, it's okay, just find the bomb and contact me after you find him," he said, after which she ran off. "Oh, you'll take care of me? We'll see about that. I have been wanting to fight you ever since you showed of your quirk, but of course like the scared little Deku you are, you ran away, but now finally I'll teach you your place. You can't beat me, Kachan, can't you see that? I have a better quirk, I know martial arts, and I have overall more fighting experience," he said in a way that sounded like he was stating facts. "Oh really? You have a better quirk? Then let's see your better quirk, deal with this," he said, and he put his hand on his bracers and was about to fire when All Might intervened. "Young Bakugo, if you fire that you will kill him." "Oh, he will be okay, he does have a better quirk after all," Bakugo said in a mocking tone and proceeded to pull the trigger. "Kachan, you idiot, are you insane?" Midoriya said as ice spread from him on the floor to his front, and he just raised his hand like the conductor of a choir, and a giant ice wall that seemed to be about 10 inches thick rose up from the ice in front of him. After the explosion hit, Midoriya immediately dropped the wall and jumped right into the smoke and fire that was still left over from the attack. Bakugo was pretty sure he had won and was now just waiting for the smoke and fire to clear out when something entered his vision, but before he could even react or ask himself what it was, Midoriya already had his hand on him and proceeded to freeze him from neck to toe. "That was a really stupid move, Kachan," Midoriya said, and was about to tell him what could have gone wrong when Uraraka called him and told him that she had found the bomb, and so he just left. "Wow, that was awesome," Kirishima said, Everyone was amazed by how efficient Midoriya had been in his takedown, and a certain heterochromatic individual was looking at Midoriya with calculating eyes. When he got to the place where the bomb was, he and Uraraka entered together and they faced Lita, who seemed like he had really embraced his position. "Give up, Lita, we have already taken care of Bakugo, you know you can't beat us alone." "Well, I will definitely try. Uraraka, go," he said, and she started running towards the bomb. Lita started moving towards her, but before he could do anything, Midoriya started shooting ice shards at him, and now he had to be the one on the defensive until Uraraka reached the bomb. After the test, Midoriya snapped his fingers and the ice encasing Bakugo shattered into a very spectacular sight, and after they watched the rest of the matches, he was very interested to see that Todoroki used ice, but other than that nothing really caught his eye, and just like that another day came to an end. "Hey Deku!" He heard someone yell from behind him, and just as he was expecting, he looked back and found Bakugo staring directly at him. He supposed it was inevitable. They hadn't really had a proper time to have a real talk because of all that had happened that day, and then all of a sudden they had to fight each other. But damn, he didn't really want to deal with this right now. "Yes, Kachan? What is it?" he asked with no emotion in his voice. "Just because I lost to you today, don't think that means you can look down on me. I will never lose to you again, and I will become the #1 hero. Mark my words," he yelled with all his heart, with tears forming in his eyes. "We meet each other after years apart and don't get a chance to talk properly for the entire day, and that's the first thing you want to say to me? I am not the one who turned his back on you. I am not the one who ran away like a coward without even saying goodbye. So off with your holier-than-thou attitude. Just know I'll never lose to you again, you damn nerd," he yelled again, and then he pushed Midoriya out of his way and went home with tears falling from his eyes. After Bakugo left, Midoriya stood there for a moment looking down with his hair shadowing his face, and a single tear fell from his eyes. As the sky started to darken and the first few drops of pure white snow fell, he also set off on his way. He had never really thought about how his leaving without even saying goodbye might have affected those left behind. He had always assumed that everyone would just move on, seeing as they were only 4 years old after all. If he was being honest with himself, it had been a long time since he thought of Bakugo or any of his old gang as friends, and he had always assumed it was the same for them. In this regard he was probably right. They also probably didn't think of him as a friend anymore, but he supposed he should have known that someone like Bakugo would have taken a bigger hit than any of the others due to his decisions. "Man, that guy always was a pain to deal with, wasn't he?" he said to himself with a sad smile. When Izuku got home, his mother could see from his demeanor and the fact that it was snowing that something was wrong. When she asked him what happened, he just told her about his talk with Bakugo. Inko never liked to see her son upset, and so she worked on him the rest of the day trying to cheer him up. Ultimately her efforts bore fruit and the sky cleared up, showing that her boy was back to his normal cheery self. "That hurt," said Izuku as he was moaning in pain. It had been a while since he had been in this much pain, so it took him a while to get himself reoriented. After struggling for a little bit and finally being able to right himself, he remembered what happened. Their class had gone to the UA training facility known as the USJ, but they had been ambushed by villains, and one of them had used his warping ability on him and his class, and that's how he found himself in this predicament. It seems the villain had warped him to the aquatic region of the USJ, and if he was anyone else he would have just dropped into the water, but it seems that his quirk reacted and created a platform for him. Of course this meant that while he didn't get wet, he had hit what basically equated to the floor from a decent height, so it hurt quite a bit. After remembering that, his mind immediately went to his classmates, and just as he was about to act, he was attacked by a group of villains that seemed to have aquatic quirks. Izuku was about to freeze them all when something long and sticky wrapped around his torso, and before he could even react he was yanked out of the water. "God damn it, this shit never ends," he grumbled to himself, and he looked back ready to freeze whatever this new thing was, but then he saw that it was just one of his classmates, and so he let himself get pulled. She dropped him onto a boat in the middle of the large body of water, and even though he is loath to admit it, he landed less than gracefully. "Thanks for the help, Asui," he said as he was getting back up. "No problem, Midoriya, and you can just call me Sue," she said. After she said that, he looked towards her and noticed that Mineta was also there. "Oh man, real villains, what are we going to do?" Mineta said, panicking. Midoriya could see the fear in his eyes, and so he decided to calm him down. "Don't worry, it's fine, these villains shouldn't be a problem for me," he said, and he walked to the edge of the boat. "Sue, you are sure that we are the only ones from our class sent here, right?" "Yeah, as far as I know." "Why?" "No, just making sure," he said, and he looked down. He could see the villains still in the water waiting them out. He assumed that the reason the villains didn't climb onto the boat was because they were weary of their quirks. Well, at least they are smart enough to realize that because of the fact that they don't know about our abilities, they should stick to the water where they have an advantage, but unfortunately for them they were paired with me. He thought to himself, and then he raised his hand and opened up his hand with his palm facing upward. After he did that, snow gathered above his palm and coalesced into a beautiful thin crystal blue stylized snowflake that had a radius of about 2 centimeters. After he created the snowflake, he tilted his hand to the side and the snowflake gently started falling into the water. Despite its shape and size, it fell into the water as slowly and gently as any other normal snowflake would. Both his classmates and the villains were very confused on what he was trying to do. Everyone held their breath, but when the snowflake hit the water, nothing happened. One of the villains was about to mock him when what can only be described as an icy explosion went off, and the entire aquatic area and quite a bit of the ground as well was immediately frozen solid. The explosion created some very strong bone-chilling winds, and Mineta and Asui were almost thrown off the boat. "What the hell was that?" shouted Mineta as he was trying to get himself back under control after that terrifying display. "Don't worry about it, we need to get out of here. Mr. Aizawa needs our help," he said, and he immediately created a slide to help them get off the ship. When they got onto the ice, Mineta and Asui were struggling with standing, and so he gave them some cleats to help them out. When he sent in his costume to the support department, he made sure to have them include a couple of cleats that can easily be attached to any shoes for such a situation with allies. He himself didn't have anything of the sort. He could walk on ice as easily as if he was walking on land, one of the benefits of ice basically being his bitch, he supposed. After making sure that his allies could at least stand now, they immediately set off to shore. When they got to shore, while already running towards the action, Izuku asked the others to hide. Asui was about to protest, but then she remembered Izuku's display of power just a couple of minutes ago, and she decided to listen. She and Mineta hid behind one of the larger frozen waves, and Izuku went forward. The scene he arrived to was not pretty. It seems the villain with the exposed brain had been slamming Mr. Aizawa's head into the ground, and the other two had been watching from the sides, but it appears that his freezing the water had made them temporarily stop because they were all looking at him. "Get away from my sensei," he yelled as he shot a giant ice spike from his hand towards the brain guy. The spike had other smaller spikes that were perpendicular to it, and so when it hit the villain, it didn't just come out the other side, but it actually carried the villain off as well due to the momentum. He had made sure to try and aim for a non-vital area, but it wasn't a guarantee. The spike traveled far enough that it pinned the brain guy on the platform the other students were standing on. Tamura Shigeaki had just been told that one of the kids was able to escape, meaning that the pro heroes would be here any minute now, and so he was justifiably pissed. He looked towards Nomu, who was slamming Eraserhead's head into the ground repeatedly, and decided that before he left he would at least kill him, when all of a sudden the entire place was engulfed in this ice-cold misty wind which seemed to be coming from his left. After the wind had passed, he looked to his left, and to his great astonishment the entire water area was frozen, and it seemed like the ice had stopped just shy of reaching them as well. As he was still trying to figure out what the hell was going on, he saw a kid wearing a blue ninja outfit running toward them, and then the kid shot something at Nomu which sent him flying. When he looked towards Nomu, he saw that he was pinned to the wall and struggling to free himself. "Damn it! Who is that brat? He just attacked my Nomu," he said while furiously scratching himself. After he got the villain off him, Izuku immediately ran towards Eraserhead to make sure he was all right, and after confirming that he was still alive, he turned his gaze to the villains. "That brat is ruining everything. Get him, Nomu," Shigaraki said with irritation in his voice, after he said that Nomu worked more fervently to free himself, and he was able to get the ice dislodged from the wall and then rip it out of himself, after which he proceeded to heal. Immediately after healing he set off towards Izuku at magnificent speeds, but Izuku was ready for him. Icy burst. He yelled and fog started to shoot from him and surrounded him in what can only be described as a tornado of fog. Nomu, not realizing the danger, jumped head first into the fog and was immediately frozen solid. But of course, just like every other time he used his abilities in battle, Izuku made sure not to freeze him solid but only encased him in a shell of ice, but with his nigh unbreakable ice that was enough. Both Kurogiri and Tamura Shigaraki couldn't believe it. That boy had taken out Nomu in an instant. The same Nomu who was supposed to be powerful enough to kill All Might. At that instant the entire battlefield froze, with everyone waiting with bated breath to see what would happen, but it seemed like Nomu really was done for. How is that possible? That brat took out Nomu, damn it. Now how are we supposed to take out All Might? Tamura Shigaraki said while scratching himself more vigorously. Let's go Kurogiri, we lost this battle. Without Nomu we can't take out All Might, he said as he was now actually starting to bleed from how hard he was scratching himself. Wait, Tamura Shigaraki, that boy was able to take out Nomu as a first-year student. If we don't take him out now he will become a huge problem later on, he said as he started taking out a syringe. And how do you propose we do that? Did you miss the part where he took out Nomu in an instant? Shigaraki asked, looking annoyed with his aide. With this, he said, showing Shigaraki the syringe. Master gave it to me to use in case of emergency, and I do believe this qualifies. This should boost my powers enough that I don't need to know the coordinates to where I am going, and I only need to think about it. I'll teleport that boy straight into the sun, he said, and he immediately stabbed himself with the syringe. After administering the syringe, Kurogiri's mist started to turn red, and immediately after he warped away from Shigaraki and reappeared right next to Midoriya. Midoriya was taken by surprise, and by the time he was about to release another icy burst, Kurogiri's mist had already surrounded him, and the next moment he was gone. The moment before he was fully engulfed, Izuku thought to himself, am I Kaichi Marizata or something? Why does all this shit happen to me? And immediately after that the young god of ice was no more. Immediately after taking care of the troublesome boy, Kurogiri teleported to Shigaraki's side and immediately warped away with him. When All Might arrived it was already too late, and all he saw when he arrived was a large body of frozen water, the frozen Nomu and Eraserhead, and the students looking towards where Midoriya had been before vanishing. After All Might ran into Tenya and he explained the situation to him, he was expecting a lot of things but definitely not what he found. When he got there he saw some of the students still standing on the raised platform near the entrance, and looking down he could see that the entirety of the water rescue zone and a pretty big portion of the actual ground itself was frozen. Judging by the color of the ice, he assumed it was young Midoriya's doing. He looked around in a confused daze as he couldn't see anyone else but the students on the platform and Eraserhead surrounded by fallen villains, what looked like a frozen statue and certainly looking like he had seen better days. He was looking at one particular spot right in front of him, but All Might couldn't really begin to guess at why. Are you all right, Aizawa? He said after rushing to his side. No, they took Midoriya, Aizawa said with a barely audible whisper before passing out. What? All Might screamed in shock. Before he could even process any of the information he had just gotten from Aizawa, he saw the students start coming towards the both of them one by one. First the ones from the platform, then two students who looked like they had been hiding in the icy plane, and finally some of the others who looked like they were coming from the other zones. All Might, they took Midoriya. The students who had seen the battle screamed hysterically, and this caused the other students who hadn't seen that to also start acting hysterical as well. Deku, you damn nerd. How could you let yourself get captured? One particular student thought to himself while clenching his fists with little miniature explosions going off in them. All Might couldn't really blame them for their reactions, and the weight of the world was also crashing down on him as well, but he couldn't let his students see him falter, and so he hardened his resolve and decided to just try and help his students get through this all in one piece. Please calm down. I know the situation with young Midoriya is desperate, and I assure you we will do everything in our power to help him, but for now we need to get our own situation under control. Bakugo and Todoroki, you two are the most powerful students here. In case there are still any villains in this area, you will protect the rest of the students here while I go gather the rest of your classmates." The aftermath of that entire fiasco at the USJ sent shockwaves throughout the entire world. No one could believe that one of the two best hero schools in Japan had been careless enough to let their students get attacked by villains, and worse yet, one of their students had actually been kidnapped. Immediately after the incident, what was probably one of the biggest manhunts in Japanese history began. The police interviewed the captured villains, Eraserhead, and even some of the students like Todoroki who had managed to gather information. The captured villains were less than useless, seeing as they were only pawns, but using the information Todoroki was able to gather and Eraserhead's own account of when he fought the frozen mindless villain, they were able to come up with a working theory. They were able to conclude that the mindless villain must have been what the villains were planning to use to kill All Might, but when they had seen a student defeated with what Aizawa described as ease, they must have realized his potential and chosen to kidnap him to maybe recruit him for their own goals or to torture him for ruining their plans, but they were being hopeful. Throughout all of this, there were 3 people who were hit the hardest by any of this. 3 people who had suddenly had their light extinguished, and for them they were about to enter into the most difficult time of their lives. "Izuku baby, where are you?" thought a woman who was crying into the arms of a man who seemed to be roughly the same age as her. It seemed like the man had smoke coming out of his mouth and his eyes were blazing red. Unfortunately for everyone fervently wishing for Izuku's return and all those who were working as hard as they could to make it happen, there was no way for them to know that their efforts were meaningless, and the only person who could save the young god was none other than himself and maybe a few friends he might make along the way. "Damn it, what happened to me? And why does it feel like I have just had a fight to the death with someone?" Izuku said to himself. "Oh yeah, I remember now, it was that Warp Gate villain. Shit, where did he send me this time?" he said as he slowly tried to get up. It was taking all the energy he had to try and stand up, and he was in the most excruciating pain he had ever felt. He was coughing up blood. He could feel with his hand that there was blood running down his face, and it felt like several of his bones might be broken, including a couple of ribs. Looking down at his clothes, he could see they were in tatters. After a minute or two, he was finally able to stand, and he looked around to try and get a bearing for where he was. When he looked around, what awaited him was sheer anarchy. He was on what looked like a bridge. In every direction he looked, there were frozen cars as far as the eye could see, and just as numerous was a virtual army of heroes and police surrounding him. Hell, there were even multiple helicopters. Seeing these things, several thoughts ran through his head at lightning speed, but one thought immediately won out, and he swiftly acted, hoping against all hope that he wasn't too late. Seeing the sheer amount of the ice surrounding him, he had come to the conclusion that in his final moments he had used too much power, but the villain had teleported him before it could take effect in the area he was in, and so immediately when he landed in this highway, it must have been like a liquid nitrogen bomb was dropped. Of course, this wasn't the issue here. The issue was the sheer amount of forces surrounding him. Even in natural disasters, those types of forces took time to gather, meaning that it had, if he was being highly optimistic, at least been a couple of minutes since he froze those people. He immediately snapped his fingers, and every inch of ice on the entire bridge shattered like glass into what was virtually an infinite number of ridiculously tiny shards that were even invisible to the human eye. But because they were so numerous, some rays of light were reflected off them, and they created a light show for the audience. Of course, no one's mind was on enjoying the spectacle, because quite a few of the heroes and police gathered around him had been using the ice as a platform to stand on, and with it gone, it wasn't hard to understand the outcome. It was actually a miracle that none of their quirks or guns had misfired from having the rug pulled out from under them. Izuku could feel that his consciousness was fading again, and he would probably faint again, but it seemed like his little stunt of making the ice disappear had made all the forces around him extra cautious, and they were finally moving in. He recognized the hero in their lead. It was the Dragoon hero, Ryuku. He could feel that he didn't have any more time left, and he decided that he needed to act soon. When she got a little bit closer to him, she used her quirk, and suddenly he was facing a giant dragon. But none of that mattered at the moment. "Please save the people. They might not be in the ice anymore, but their body temperatures should still be dangerously low, and don't touch me directly with your bare skin, otherwise you will die," he said with a barely audible sound that was only heard by Ryuku and a few other heroes and police officers who were closest to him. "Huh, well, I'll be damned. A top 10 hero for little old me? Aren't I flattered? He thought as his vision started getting darker. Having done what he could for them and hoping against all hope that no one would die, he collapsed. Ryuku was out patrolling along the city right now. She always liked going on patrol. It gave her a sense of peace and accomplishment when the citizens would look at her and she could see in their eyes that they felt safe, almost like nothing could hurt them when she was around. She saw other heroes also on patrol. It wasn't a surprise since the hero profession was so heavily saturated and each city had multiple hero agencies. She could see some of the other heroes looking at her with awe and reverence, but she supposed that was only to be expected as she was a top 10 hero. That was the kind of status most heroes longed for, but of course some of them were only interested in the amount of money that a top 10 hero could make, but she didn't really hold that against them, seeing as to her there was nothing wrong with becoming a hero for money as long as when the situation called for it the person was willing to put their life on the line and get the job done. While walking around and having some of these thoughts, a strong gust of wind suddenly hit her and she looked towards the direction it came from. She couldn't believe it. She saw what looked to be a huge pillar of ice and snow around where she believed the bridge to be. The pillar looked like it was pretty far, and yet the icy chill of the wind felt like she was right next to it. She couldn't imagine what being actually near it would feel like. After that brief moment of hesitation, she got into hero mode. All civilians, please get back to your homes, and as for the heroes, let's go. We need to see what's going on. I'll fly on ahead, she screamed. Normally she wouldn't have had to scream so loudly, but the wind had a deafening roar. She started running, and when she got to a less densely populated area, she took her dragon form and was off. As she was flying towards it, she saw the pillar finally die down until it faded. Seeing that, she pushed herself, giving the flying everything she could possibly give. As she was flying, she noticed that police helicopters and other heroes who could also fly were heading towards the scene. As she got closer, she saw the scene, which was unlike anything she had ever seen in her life. It looked like the entire bridge was covered in a blue crystal or ice, she guessed as she got closer and was able to take a better look. When she landed, there were already quite a few heroes present. Those must have been the ones who were closer to the bridge. Most of them were having trouble getting closer to the epicenter because of the fact that the entire bridge and all the cars that had been on it were covered in ice, and naturally ice is slippery. Even in these conditions, though, they made do, and there were already quite a few steadily making their way to the center. For her this wasn't a problem, and she took flight again and landed right where the epicenter was and transformed back to her human form, with a few other heroes who were able to fly already landing right next to her. She wasn't sure what she was expecting to find, but this was certainly not it. There was a white-haired boy on the ground who was bleeding profusely and was also covered in ice, but it seemed like it was receding from him. It seemed like the boy had just come out from a war zone and had actually barely managed to survive, and looking around it looked like every car that was there had been buried in a huge tsunami of ice. Before she could even assess the situation, the boy started to stir and woke up. He looked confused for a time, and then he started talking to himself. He seemed to work through the excruciating pain that he was undoubtedly in and started to stand up. After standing up, he looked around him and she could see that he was surprised, but she could also see what looked to be fear in his eyes. After a couple of seconds, he snapped his fingers and all the ice on the bridge disappeared to be replaced by what could only be called a light show. It was certainly one of the most beautiful things she had ever seen. Perhaps even more beautiful than the cherry blossoms when they are in full bloom. After that momentary distraction and seeing the heroes and police officers who had been unbalanced by the ice disappearing, she was able to get her head back into the game. Everyone started advancing towards him with her in the lead. As she started walking towards him, she saw what looked to be a flash of recognition in his eyes, but she could also see that he was barely holding on to consciousness. She transformed into her dragon form as an intimidation tactic, but also because she wasn't sure what he might pull again. She knew that if he unleashed another attack like that again, all the heroes and police here would not be able to take it. Hell, even she might not survive, so she was just hoping he would lose consciousness soon. Please save the people. They might not be in the ice anymore, but their body temperatures should still be dangerously low, and don't touch me directly with your bare skin, otherwise you will die, he said, and then he collapsed. She couldn't be sure, but she could have sworn that when he had said that she had seen a tear slip from his eyes. After he said that, she was momentarily stunned. but after a while his words sank in and she got to work. All heroes with fire powers, you need to get to work trying to warm the civilians, and everyone else use your own jackets, clothes and whatever else you can to help warm them up. Hopefully most of them can still be saved and nobody touch him for the moment. She roared and everyone got to work trying desperately to save as many lives as they could. After she conveyed her order, she turned back into a human and started moving cautiously towards him with a few other pro-heroes and cops. Somebody get me some gloves or something, and anyone else who does not have gloves, don't touch him. After she got the gloves, she moved towards him and turned him over so that he was facing upwards. After turning him over, she could see that he really was just a kid, probably still in middle school or maybe just started high school. Thanks to the efforts of the Dragoon hero and many other heroes and police officers who were on the scene, many lives were saved that day, and what could have possibly been a disaster was avoided. The mysterious boy at the heart of the matter was taken to the hospital to receive treatment for his wounds, but nonetheless he was still the one responsible for the incident, and so naturally the police could not let him go, and he was chained to his bed and had a full unit of officers guarding him at all times. Ryuku didn't know what to make of the situation at all. The boy truly did seem like he did not mean to do what he did. Could his quirk have gone out of control? But what about those wounds on him? Perhaps they had been caused by using too much of his quirk's power. But that can't be. The boy had multiple lacerations and broken bones, which are more indicative of a fight. How could the backlash for an ice quirk have caused anything remotely similar to that? The wounds would suggest he had been in a fight and had merely used everything in his arsenal to try to survive. Though that also didn't make any sense, seeing as how they found no one there who he could have possibly been fighting, and the blood was localized to the area around him, and with the number of wounds he had, if he had been in a battle there would have been more blood across a greater area of the bridge. There was also the fact that if there had been a battle on the bridge someone would have reported it in, but no such call was logged. It almost seemed as if he appeared out of nowhere. She had been actively talking with the police to keep herself updated on the situation. She felt like the boy truly wasn't to blame, and so she wanted to know what his fate would be. It had been a while since an incident affecting this many people had occurred in Japan, and so the police force was under a lot of pressure to give the people answers. Of course, even if they would give people answers in the end, no one would ever know what the boy looked like, because according to Japanese law the faces of minor criminals were never revealed to the public. They couldn't really give any solid answers though, seeing as how the boy hadn't woken up yet, and so they had to go through other avenues to get to the bottom of this. "Could you please tell me why you called us here?" Principal Nedzu asked Detective Naomasa. He was accompanied by UA staff members All Might, Eraserhead, Present Mike, Midnight, Cementos and Vlad King. "Yes, of course, sir. Now I am sure you have heard of the incident on Shinjuku Bridge?" "Yes, as I recall the news goes that some unknown boy was able to freeze the entire bridge and a few civilians even died." According to Ryuku and couple of other heroes and officers' statements of the boy expressing his wish for the civilians to be saved, it is conjectured that the boy's quirk might have gone out of control, potentially also accounting for his injuries since there seemed to be no assailant on the scene. Always well informed as usual, Principal, but now we found something interesting in the boy's tattered clothes. We found a UA student card. "That's impossible. The only ice user we have among our students is Todoroki, and he is accounted for," Aizawa said with his usual lazy drawl. "Does the name Izuku Midoriya ring any bells?" After he asked that, All Might almost fell out of his chair. "Did you say Izuku Midoriya? That's impossible. We know for a fact that Izuku Midoriya's quirk has nothing to do with ice," he said after composing himself. "Really then? I suspected it might be a fake when he wasn't registered in the quirk registry. Obviously every UA student is registered," he said as he set the card down on the table. After he sat it down on the table, All Might reached out for it to try to see what this young man looked like. "Impossible," he said, and immediately dropped it like it had burned him or something. "Are you sure that's what he looks like?" he asked, to which Naomasa nodded. "What's wrong, All Might?" Aizawa said as he too reached for the card. Aizawa was also surprised by what he saw, but he was able to keep his cool a little bit better. "Well, this is interesting. Aside from his hair and eye color, I could say I was definitely looking at Izuku Midoriya. Principal, All Might, do you guys know if Midoriya has a twin?" No, his family records indicate he has no siblings, the principal said. Yes, that is also what I have gathered from young Midoriya, All Might added. Well, isn't this boy a mystery wrapped in an enigma? Present Mike said, sounding as cheery as always. That he is. Eraserhead said, looking at the card like if he even looked away from it for a second it might disappear. Ah, what happened? Izuku said while trying to move one of his hands to touch his head, which had a massive headache, but he found that he couldn't move his hands. When he looked down he saw the problem. His hands were handcuffed. He supposed he should have been expecting this considering the situation he was in before passing out. Hello? Is anyone out there? He called out into the room, and immediately after, a couple of cops walked into his room. One of them sent one of the others to call the doctor. When the doctor arrived, he ran a couple of tests on Izuku to make sure he was fine. After ascertaining that he was now out of the worst of it, the doctor said that the cops can interview Izuku anytime they wish. Izuku didn't even care about being interviewed. He knew that he had been away from his mom for at least a day, meaning that his mom would be very worried, and so he requested to have the opportunity to contact his mother. Hello. This is Inko Midoriya. Could you please tell me who I am speaking to? Oh hey mom, it's me. I just wanted to apologize for being away for so long. I know you must have been worried sick, but I am fine now. What do you mean, honey? You only left this morning. Why would I be worried about something like that? What? This morning? What do you mean? That can't be possible, he said as he started to panic a little bit. This morning? What could she mean? There is no way that everything that has happened all happened in a single day, and even if it did, I am certain it would be way later right now, and yet it's still before 12 o'clock. No, something is definitely wrong. Oh yeah, sorry about that, kind of forgot. Anyway, later mom, he said while chuckling awkwardly. Inko could tell from that conversation that something wasn't right, but she decided to let it go for now, deciding that she would ask him over dinner. Izuku was panicking. Something was terribly wrong and he didn't know what, but he knew it spelled trouble. Left this morning. What the is she talking about? And why didn't she ask me about the USJ or the incident on the bridge? One of those must have appeared on TV by now, he asked himself. These questions led to even more questions, and he found himself left with more questions than answers in the end. While he was contemplating what is going on, he heard a knock on the door and decided to shelve his questions for later, assuming that he might be getting answers pretty soon. Ryuku was having her morning coffee before going on patrol when she got the call notifying her that the boy was up, and she rushed to the hospital without even finishing her food. She had been both worried about and interested in the boy, and so she had asked that she be notified when he woke up, and of course, being a top 10 hero, they were not going to deny her. When she got to the hospital, she ran into Naomasa, the detective who was working on the case, and surprisingly some UA staff who had among their ranks the principal, Eraserhead, and an emancipated man who she didn't really know. She greeted them and told them she was here to see the boy. The detective agreed to let her sit in on the boy's questioning since he was already going to let the UA staff members sit in, so it wasn't really a big deal, and she was introduced to the man Toshinori Yagi. When they got to the boy's room they knocked, and after they were let in she could finally see the boy without him looking like he was about to pass out, and her earlier thoughts that he was quite young were reaffirmed. Midoriya was quite surprised when a whole group of people entered his room. He had been expecting 1 or 2, but 5 was surprising to say the least, but he was happy to see 2 familiar faces mixed in there. Oh Aizawa-sensei, I am glad to see that you are fine. After seeing how much damage that villain did to you I was worried, he said with a huge smile on his face. After he said that, the 3 from UA and the detective shared a look which didn't go unnoticed by Midoriya. Oh, I didn't know he was a UA student, but I guess I should have known with such a powerful quirk, Ryuku said, being oblivious to the mood in the room. You didn't know because he is not. I have never seen this boy before in my life, Aizawa said. What the hell do you mean, Aizawa-sensei? Did that villain knock you against the floor 1 too many times? You are my homeroom teacher, Midoriya said a little bit hysterically. He was getting tired of people saying stuff that didn't make any sense. Before anyone could respond or make heads or tails of the situation, the detective moved forward and decided to ask the questions that had been bothering him. Hello young man, my name is Detective Naomasa. I am the detective that has been put in charge of your case. Could you please tell me your name, quirk, and how you got on that bridge covered in injuries? Even though Izuku was still not sure what the hell was going on, he decided to answer the detective. "Oh yeah, sure. My name is Izuku Midoriya, first-year student at UA, and my quirk is called Crystal Ice. As for how I got on that bridge, you guys should already know, but whatever, so what happened was..." He told them everything that he remembered about the USJ incident and the Warp Gate villain using his quirk on him. "Okay, thank you, young man. Could you please give me a moment to have a chat with my companions here?" "Oh yeah, sure," Izuku said. He had to admit that he also needed a moment to himself to collect his thoughts. This boy is delusional. None of the things he said happened have ever happened, and like I said, I am not his homeroom teacher, Aizawa said while trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Well, at the end of the day, my quirk confirmed he was not lying, meaning he really does believe what he is telling us to be the truth. I think maybe a mind-altering quirk or something similar was used on him, Naomasa said. While this back and forth discussion was going on, the principal decided to test out a theory that had been bubbling up in his mind ever since he had seen the similarities to this boy and Midoriya and the way the boy talked about attending UA. It was certainly possible that that was the case. "Midoriya, could you please tell us what you did on the first day of class?" the principal asked. "Yeah, sure. We had a quirk apprehension test and Mr. Aizawa had threatened to kick out the person who comes in last, but at the end when Mineta came in last he told us it was a bluff. I am pretty sure that was a lie, and he would have kicked out the person in last place if he deemed them to have no potential, but that's just me." "Mineta?" Aizawa asked, more to himself than anyone else really. "Yeah, don't you remember Mineta was last, Yaoyorozu first, Todoroki second, and Bakugo third?" "Is that about how it went, Aizawa?" the principal asked. "Yeah, it is similar to how it went, but Midoriya was the one in last place," he said with a dazed look. He was beginning to realize that something was very wrong here. Even if someone could have rewritten this young man's memories, how did they know so much about his class, and why did he look so much like Midoriya? "Last place? As if I was perfectly comfortable in 10th place. Okay, I think I have an idea what is going on. It's going to sound crazy, but please hear me out. I do believe from all the information he has given to us and his striking similarity to young Midoriya that this young man came here from a parallel universe," the principal said with as straight a face as he could muster. "A parallel universe? That's ridiculous." Eraserhead was the first person to give his opinion on the matter. "Yeah, there is no way. But wait, a parallel universe would actually explain some things perfectly, like why my mom wasn't worried about me, why no one has talked about the USJ attack, and hell, even why Mr. Aizawa seems to not know about me," he said as he started to mutter to himself. "A parallel universe? What makes you think that, principal?" Ryuku said as she finally got into the conversation. She had been hit with bombshell after another ever since coming in here, and so she had to take some time to stabilize herself before getting back into the conversation. "Well, it's quite simple. The first clue is obviously his uncanny similarity to a student of ours by the name of Izuku Midoriya. They look like they could be twins, with the only difference between them being their hair and eye color. The difference between hair and eye color can be accounted for by the fact that they have different quirks, and therefore some of their DNA should be different, but I can assure you if you ran a DNA test you would probably find a ridiculously close match between them. Another clue is obviously his insistence on being a UA student. At first you could say someone has messed with his mind, but the way he so accurately described the first day of the hero course, knew every single student in class 1A, and was even able to discern the fact that Aizawa really might have expelled the student in last place, leads me to believe he is also Izuku Midoriya, but from a parallel world where he was born with a different quirk." "A parallel world? Is there any way that we can try to confirm this?" Naomasa asked. "I am not really sure. A simple way might be to just find out everything we can about him and compare it to what we know about Midoriya, and if he is from a parallel world, enough things that no one else knows about should be similar enough that we can verify that they are the same person. What if more than just their quirks are different?" All Might finally chimed in. He said that he called his mother, meaning her number phone is still the same, which leads me to believe that enough things should still be similar enough that it would be conclusive, and besides, if it doesn't work we can think of something else. Everyone in the room was stunned with this new theory that the principal had put forward, but then again it also seemed to make the most sense, and so they decided to at least test it out to see if it had any truth to it at all. They decided that they would gather as much information about Izuku Midoriya as they could first and then use that to compile the questions, meaning that they would wait a couple of days and then they would conduct the interview at the station. This was good because it would also give Midoriya enough time to fully recover. At long last the time had finally come for the interview, and in all honesty everyone was both nervous and excited about what was to come. On the other side of Izuku, he still had the same old people that were there before. He supposed there was no way any of them would have missed it, seeing how curious they looked. With the help of Izuku's school records, they had compiled a list of questions that they would ask Izuku to see how much his answers correlate with the other one. They bombarded him with questions, and after they were done they concluded that no matter how crazy it seemed, there were only two possibilities here: either this boy really was Izuku Midoriya from a parallel world, or a very powerful mind-altering quirk had been used on this poor boy. For now, due to the extra evidence in favor of him being Izuku, like his near-identical appearance both in terms of phenotype and genotype, and also the fact that it was almost impossible to forge a UA student ID, but of course they weren't naive enough to think it was impossible. They decided to move forward based on the assumption that he really was from a parallel Earth, having established that they spent a day or two with Izuku asking him questions, trying to discern what was different so that they can know whether any information Izuku might give them about their own world would be reliable or what. After extensive questioning, the only difference that they had noted so far was that Midoriya had a different quirk, and so the principal brought up the idea that the divergence point between the two worlds might be Midoriya getting a different quirk, which would mean initially the only thing that would be different would be that, but Midoriya's actions would cause the timelines to diverge until they were unrecognizable. They knew that for now all of this was mere speculation, and so they decided to move on to the main issue for now. Okay, now that we have our theories, what do we do with the boy? He can't stay here forever, Aizawa said with a scowl. Yes, I am afraid that's true, but without running into that villain again, I don't know how we are going to send him back. Perhaps a different warp gate user, the principal suggested. Even if we were to get a different warp gate user, who's to say they would be able to send me back to my own universe? We have no way of knowing how many of these universes there are, and if it works by some type of lottery, then I might never be able to get back, Izuku said, feeling extremely dejected. Well, you are not wrong, but we can't give up yet. How about I keep investigating and trying to find you a different warp gate user or the villain himself, and we can try to see what we can do, the detective said, trying to cheer him up. Excellent idea, detective, and in the meantime I have got an idea of my own. Midoriya, how would you feel about becoming a UA student? What? Both Midoriya and Aizawa exclaimed at the same time. Why are you so shocked? This is the most optimum solution. Young Midoriya can continue his hero education, and we can keep an eye on him to make sure he doesn't get into trouble. Now that you mention it, it's not a bad idea, but where would he stay? I don't believe we are going to tell a whole lot of other people his origins, are we? I can take him in, Ryuku said, with everyone looking at her like she had just sprouted a second head. What? I feel like out of the people who know I am the most normal person. No offense to you guys, but I don't know if him staying with the loner, symbol of peace, or the giant rat is going to do him any good. They couldn't really deny her logic, and so it was decided that Midoriya would stay with her while the secrets about him would stay with them and a few other respected allies. The police just reported to the public that the incident was just caused by a kid who lost control of his quirk, and that was the end of that. In all honesty, it had only been about a week since school started, and so it was decided that Midoriya would get the weekend to settle in with Ryuku, or her civilian name Ryuko, and then he would start earnestly at the start of the second week. The weekend came and went, and finally it was time for him to meet this new Class 1A, and more importantly his counterpart. Seeing as he had already been going to UA for about a month, he didn't have any trouble finding his classroom, but because he had never taken the train from Ryuku's place, he was still late, and when he got there it seemed like it had been a minute or two since class started. All right class, we have a new student joining us today, treat him well, introduce yourself, he said, gesturing to Midoriya. Hi everyone, my name is Izuku Tatsuma, it's a pleasure to meet you, he said with a small smile. Wow Deku, he has the same name as you and he looks like you, what are the odds, huh? Uraraka said while giggling and looking straight at Midoriya. Yeah, what are the odds? Midoriya said while looking Izuku straight in the eye, who was also looking him in the eye. Ba dum, ba dum. Ba dum. Ba dum. Ba dum. What? What's going on? Why? The minute Midoriya looked his mysterious doppelganger in the eye, he was immediately seized by a terror unlike any he had ever felt before. He broke out in a cold sweat, immediately hunched over on his desk and started hyperventilating. At that moment it felt as if some disgusting entity had plunged its slimy and cold hand straight through his ribcage and was currently gripping his heart, as if any moment could be his last. The current feeling bore a resemblance to the first time he met All Might, when the symbol of peace saved him from the slime villain that tried to drown him, but it felt 1,000 times worse. He imagined that this must be what a sheep feels when they look into the eyes of the butcher brandishing the instrument of its demise. Deku. Almost as if in some distant dream, he started hearing a familiar voice, but it was so muffled that he couldn't really make out what the person was trying to say, although it did get louder and louder until he could hear that the person was shouting out his name. Hey, are you okay? Ochako said to him with a hint of tears in her eyes. Yeah, I'm fine, Midoriya said as his breathing finally started getting back to normal. He looked around and he could see that all eyes were on him. Even their new student was looking at him like he had grown a second head. Midoriya, are you okay? Mr. Aizawa asked as he started walking towards him. Yes sir, I'm fine, sorry about that, he said as he tried to wave away both the concern and eyes of his classmates which had both fallen squarely on him. Fine, but you should go to Recovery Girl when the period ends. Mr. Aizawa looked at him one last time and then, seeing that he seemed to have gotten over whatever hang-up he was going through, Mr. Aizawa decided that it would be best to go back to having their new student finish his introductions so that they can move on to more pressing matters. After Midoriya's little episode, the mood got a little more tense, and Izuku, sensing that the atmosphere had changed, decided that his introduction would have to end there. He decided to just go sit down. The teachers had a meeting yesterday and there has been a change of plans. Your timetable for the day will be different than usual, Mr. Aizawa said as he instructed the students to go to the locker room and suit up. I think we should cancel the trip. Knowing what we know, it would be irresponsible to place the lives of our students at risk like that. I agree, even if nothing happens we shouldn't risk it. I'm not sure that's the best course of action, the principal said as all eyes fell on him. The staff of UA were having an urgent meeting to discuss their new enigmatic student, with Principal Nedzu and the others who had already interacted with the parallel Earth Izuku Midoriya filling in the rest of the staff as to the events surrounding their new student. It had taken a lot of explaining, but the rest of the staff had finally come to understand the situation they found themselves in, and so now the conversation had inevitably landed on the topic of Class 1A's trip to the USJ. The majority of the teachers were of the opinion that the school shouldn't take a chance and should immediately cancel or reschedule the trip, but now it seemed that the principal was of a different opinion. Think about it. If things in our universe unfold the same as in young Midoriya's universe, then we have a huge advantage over these villains in terms of intel. And now a situation that could have potentially found us lacking could be used to deal with a group that sounds like they could be troublesome. But sir, even if we could maybe deploy all the teachers as extra security, there's no guarantee that there won't be any accidents, Cementos said, with quite a few of the other teachers nodding their heads in agreement. That's certainly true, but think of it this way, if our students don't go on that trip and that date passes, that means we will have reached the limits of young Midoriya's knowledge on this situation. His time will have caught up with ours and he won't be making any more predictions. This means that we would potentially still have a group of villains that are hostile to the school, but now we wouldn't know when they will attack us, which would put our students in even more danger. At least this way we can put contingencies in place that can minimize the risk to our students, and as for the possibility of any accidents, well, our students knew the risks involved when they decided to become heroes. The principal is right, Mr. Aizawa said with a downward gaze. He loathed to admit it, but the principal's logic was flawless. If they didn't use this information, the window would close and they would have squandered what basically amounted to a prophecy from on high. He was terrified for the safety of his students, but he also understood that this was the safest option. After it was established that everyone was on the same page, the focus now had to be on deciding what the best course of action was and how to best prepare their students for what they might encounter. Nice to meet you, man. The name's Eijiro Kirishima. I'm Denki Kaminari. Nice to meet you, but wow dude, I can't get over how much you look like Midoriya and same name too. That's insane. Are you guys twins? Shut up, you idiot. Deku doesn't have a twin. All of the Class 1A guys except for Izuku Midoriya were in the boys' locker room changing for this mysterious exercise that Mr. Aizawa didn't want to explain. They were taking this time to introduce themselves to their new classmate. Nice to meet you guys too, and no, I do not have a twin, not as far as I know anyway, Izuku said with a smile. But you really do look exactly the same as him. It's disturbing, Iida said as he was inspecting Izuku like he was the most interesting thing he had ever seen. Are you guys crazy? This asshole is much more good-looking than Midoriya, Mineta said as he gave Izuku the stink eye. Izuku couldn't believe it. These people acted exactly the same as his own classmates. He had yet to notice even a single difference in their behavior, although he noticed that Bakugo was looking at him with a stare of unmatched intensity, or at least it was way more intense than his own Bakugo's stares, but otherwise it was almost like he was in his own universe. Except he wasn't home and these people weren't his friends, as evidenced by the fact that they were introducing themselves to him, like the stranger he was. Wow, it just got really chilly, Mineta said as everyone started shivering a little bit. I would have to run more tests on you, but at the current moment you seem fine. I believe you might have just had a panic attack, she said as she looked at her most frequent visitor with worry in her eyes. As everyone went to the locker rooms, Midoriya had gone to Recovery Girl's office as Mr. Aizawa had instructed. She had just finished running some tests on him and she had found that he was okay. He thought about her diagnosis and it sort of made sense, or at least it was how he guessed a panic attack would feel like, especially since he had always had a lot of anxiety, so he had been in similar situations, although he had never felt anything of such intensity and without any discernible cause. She had asked him some questions about how he felt and what he thought might have been the reason for his sudden attack, but he found them incredibly hard to answer. The only concrete image he had in his mind about the incident was that he felt like he was going to die, similar to how you might feel when someone points a gun at your head. Well, I think you can go back to class now, but please do come back later so we can run more tests. Thank you, I'll come back after school, he said as he left her office. I wonder why he looks like me so much, and with the same name. Maybe I have a long-lost twin, he thought to himself as he was walking to the locker room. His panic attack had distracted him from contemplating it, but now that he was a bit more at ease, his mind couldn't help but wander back to his new classmate. He was very well versed in the concept of doppelgangers, but he had never heard of doppelgangers that seemed so similar. If he discounted the color of Izuku's hair and eyes, then he was basically an exact copy of him. It's so bizarre. Bang! All of a sudden the door slammed shut behind them. Everyone looked back because it was just so sudden, but as they were still distracted by the door being shut, all the lights were turned off. This was the site of their surprise exercise. They were in what looked like a warehouse, or rather one of those huge wholesale shops, like a really big Walmart. Hey, what's going on? Let me out of here, Mineta shouted as he banged on the door. The others were also shaken a little bit, but they were slightly calmer as they understood that the school would obviously never hurt them. Everybody just started trying to look around, but it was pitch black. You couldn't really see more than a couple of centimeters from yourself. Cementos, you can begin. While they were still in that panic mode, the students heard Mr. Aizawa's voice echo throughout the store. Without a moment's delay, walls were immediately erected in the store. These walls all stretched from a point on the door all the way to the horizon. There were 4 walls in total, and each wall now held a certain number of our students hostage. They were cut off from the rest of their classmates, although because of the enormity of this place each group still had a very hefty bit of breathing room. Attention all students, the exercise shall now begin. You will all be separated into 2 groups, heroes and villains. You will be able to classify which group the people you encounter fall into based on the color of the light emitting from the tags you were provided at the start of the exercise. The blue group shall be the villains and the red group shall be the heroes. Each group is divided into smaller teams, which are made up of members of the same group on the same side of the wall. Each hero team shall be tasked with either soliciting a verbal surrender from the villains or evading them until the exercise end, although be warned that you can only start evading after an encounter with a villain team and the heroes decide that they are unable to subdue the team. You are not allowed to hide yourself before trying to subdue the villains. After a clash with a villain team, a hero team will be allowed to use the strategy of hiding. Each villain team shall be tasked with killing any hero team they encounter. The heroes shall be declared dead when it is deemed that any continuation of the fight would only result in them getting needlessly hurt and that they are unable to escape. That is all, you may begin. The principal's lengthy explanation boomed over the store's speaker system. After the end of that speech, Izuku finally decided to look around and surprise, he couldn't really see much beyond a couple of centimeters from him. Even the light emitting from the tags was pretty useless. All he could see was the blue near his chest, and one other blue light near him, but their lighting was so bad that he couldn't even tell who the other person was. As he was about to talk to his mysterious companion, it suddenly got extremely bright in the room, and he immediately shut his eyes, as they were almost blinded in that instance. "Oh, sorry about that," he heard a soft voice say to him. He looked up and he found himself standing with the class deputy Momo Yaoyorozu. "Oh no, it's fine. I'm just glad to have some light," he said with a huge smile that just effortlessly blossomed on his face. He couldn't believe getting paired with the girl that could create things was a brilliant stroke of luck. "Are we the only members of the villain group on this side of the wall?" she asked as she also started to look around. "Yeah, it seems so," Midoriya said as they both just scanned their immediate surroundings. He was struck by how even with Yaoyorozu having created such a powerful flashlight, there was still such a huge part of the store they couldn't see. You could only see for maybe 20 meters until the darkness started to encroach on the light, and after about 50 meters you couldn't really see anything. He shivered to imagine what his less fortunate classmates were going through in all this darkness. Their situations were even worse than his. It was quiet, eerily quiet, like that really tense scene in a horror movie where you know that one of our characters is about to die. The only sound was both their fidgeting and small movements as they looked around. There were quite a few aisles in front of them, with most of them seeming to just be filled with food. They were both taking this lull in conversation as an opportunity to reflect on the scope of their current task and the way to go about achieving their objectives. "I think we should come up with a plan. I don't know if you noticed, but all of our classmates' tags were blue. So who are these so-called heroes?" she asked. "Yeah, you are right. They were all blue, meaning we should all be part of the same group. But if we are part of the same group, then who did they get to be the heroes? Maybe the teachers are a different class. But wait, what about?" He completely went off the rails and started mumbling as he thought about their current situation. Weird. That's the same thing that Midoriya does, Momo thought as she looked at their new classmate who was busy mumbling like a mad scientist. She wasn't very close with Izuku Midoriya, but they were classmates and he was a very nice guy, so she had some fondness for him. She hadn't really thought about it, but looking at him now as he was displaying the exact same behavior as Midoriya, she couldn't help but be shocked by how similar they looked. The hair and eyes were one thing, but everything else was identical. It had to be impossible to look this much like anyone by chance, and they even had similar personalities. "Who are you?" she wondered as she almost blurted it out, but she was able to rein herself in as she deemed it would be impolite. As that thought was crossing her mind, Izuku finally came back to earth. "Sorry," he said as his cheeks reddened. "No, it's fine, as long as all that thinking was worth it." "Yep, it was. I've thought about it and it doesn't really matter who our enemies are. With your versatility and my raw power we shouldn't have any problems. So, let's go," he said as he immediately started walking towards the aisles. "Wait, what? That's not a strategy. Hell, that's not even a plan. What if our enemies are stronger than you?" After she said that, Izuku stopped walking and looked back at her. All of a sudden she started feeling cold, but she still focused on Izuku. She wanted to know his answer. Izuku just looked at her and then he took a deep breath and let it out. The breath was visible in the air, like on those cold mornings. All I can say is that if we do run into someone stronger than me, then no plan will save us, he said as he immediately started walking again. That sounds pretty arrogant, she said as she also started walking with him. It's not arrogance, it's self-awareness. I would never use such a crude strategy in real hero work, but I just happen to know that the odds of finding anyone at this school capable of taking me on in pure combat are low. Okay. Then, I hope you're right. After that discussion they both fell silent, and she just took this moment to look around. Even for someone as rich as her, it was amazing to think that this giant store full of actual food and basically anything else you could ever need to buy was just a training spot for the school's students, almost like it was a flex showcasing the soft power that the school wields. The aisle they were currently walking down seemed to have a lot of different types of snacks, and they were currently passing through a huge assortment of different potato chips, with some being name brands that she had never seen before. As they were walking, Izuku took a pack of Doritos and opened it and started eating. "You want some?" he asked as he passed the pack to her. "Yeah, thanks," she said as she took the packet and started eating. Her first thought was to say no, but since her powers were literally fueled by food and she was slightly nervous, she decided eating might be the proper response. He seems more confident than our Izuku, she thought as she observed her partner. She didn't even know what his quirk was or if it was actually powerful, but she felt that she could trust him. Besides, it sounded like this particular exercise didn't have any bearing on their grades, so she was okay with taking a leap. "She's right, that does sound arrogant," Mr. Aizawa said, as he was intently watching the monitor showing their new student. The teachers were all in a room that had a live feed of everything taking place in the store. The cameras had night vision while the tags that were assigned to the students were fitted with tiny mics. "If you had that kind of power, wouldn't you also be a tad arrogant? I mean, he did say he was able to one-shot a villain that was pummeling you, and you saw firsthand the carnage that he unleashed on the bridge. Besides, he's not wrong. The only people in this school who could take him are probably you, All Might, and maybe his counterpart if he could control his quirk. So like he said, it's not arrogance, it's just a deep understanding of the limits of his quirk," Midnight said as she was also looking at the screen without blinking. "What's going on? We are sinking," Mineta shouted as he struggled to try and get free. "Don't fret, my dazzling light shall free us," Aoyama said, as he held on to both of them and then shot his naval laser down towards the ground. The laser pushed them out of the ground, and they crashed a few meters away from the spot they were in. "Thanks, Aoyama, but what was that?" Midoriya said as he started looking around. He could now see what looked to be 4 tiny points of red light that were floating in front of them. "Aoyama, could you give us some light?" he said as they all started panicking a little bit. Aoyama shot his Enval laser, and the brief moment of light that they received showed them that they were indeed dealing with 4 individuals that they had never seen before. Midoriya had been racking his brain trying to deduce who they would be facing, as like Yaoyorozu and Izuku he had been able to discern that they would be facing people other than their classmates, but he had never seen these individuals before. Aoyama's quirk had only been able to give them light for about a second, but he was able to see their opponents. It was 2 guys and 2 girls. The guy in front, who seemed to be the one whose quirk they had been facing, was wearing a costume that seemed similar to the one Iida wears, except that his was orange and black, with some other minor differences. While he was still trying to figure out the identities of their mysterious opponents, various nuts, bolts and other miscellaneous tools started flying towards them at frightening speeds. They were able to dodge a few of them, but with the lighting conditions they were at a disadvantage, and some of them were able to hit him and his teammates. "Ouch! Are you guys trying to kill us?" Mineta yelled as he also started tossing some of his sticky balls at their opponents, while receiving cover fire from Aoyama, who also started firing his naval laser. The onslaught from his teammates made the other team stop attacking, as it seemed like they had only one individual who could attack at long range. Just as Midoriya was contemplating on whether they should continue attacking or retreat, the shelf to the left of them, about 5 meters in front, seemed to lose its balance and started falling. Boom! It crashed into the other shelves that were parallel to it instead of a chain reaction. Every single second now seemed to be punctuated with the sound of crashes. "Guys, let's fall back and regroup," Midoriya said as they could now no longer see their opponents who were hidden by the shelf and its contents. Immediately after he said that, he saw a punch coming towards him from out of the ground. He tried to dodge, but it was too late and he was hit. As he was still trying to orient himself after that punch, Mineta grabbed his hand and pulled him in the opposite direction as they started running. "Aoyama, give us some light," Midoriya said as they were still running. Aoyama shot a laser beam in front of them, and the light it produced was enough to show them their other 3 enemies were now in front of them. "They must have circled around the back while the other guy distracted us," Midoriya shouted as they came to a screeching halt. Vines started growing from the ground in front of them, slowly encroaching on the area they were standing. "Aoyama!" Midoriya shouted as Aoyama moved to the front and immediately fired a laser blast at the vines. The blast lasted about 2 seconds and was directed in a way as to start from the left and move right, and it was able to bisect the vines in half. "Oh, my stomach," Aoyama said as he held onto his stomach and crouched down in pain. A second after Aoyama fired of his blast, a figure jumped towards them from behind the vines. While they were still shocked, the figure moved towards Aoyama. "Smash!" Midoriya shouted as he unleashed a smash from his left index finger aimed at their attacker. The person was off balance because of the running, so the smash slammed into the attacker and was able to toss them back towards their teammates. "Kendo!" They heard one of their attackers shout, and immediately after, Midoriya was hit by a projectile on his right shoulder. The projectile knocked him off his feet and he fell. As he was getting back up, the ground around him suddenly became soft and he started sinking again. As he started sinking, he felt someone hold onto his leg and pull him down. This caused him to sink faster. "Smash!" he shouted as he let loose another smash from his left middle finger, which was able to allow him to free himself as he was propelled about a meter from the ground. Midoriya crashed near his teammates, and before he could even catch his breath, one of their enemies swiftly moved towards them. "Mineta, now," he said as he stood ready to face them. Vines started growing from the ground again, but this time they immediately went towards Aoyama. As the vines were wrapping around Aoyama, he also saw Mineta begin to sink. "What did you do?" he heard a lady shout. "What's going on?" He also heard a more masculine voice complaining. "Aoyama, could we please have some light?" Just as Midoriya had thought, the quicksand guy was now glued to a small object made of Mineta's balls that had a light-emitting tag on it, and it was also the same with the vines. They also seemed to be in luck because the vines were actually a part of the individual's body, so they couldn't just keep attacking them. It seemed that the individual that he had hit with the smash was still incapacitated, so that meant that they had managed to defeat 3 of their enemies and only 1 was left. "Guys, give me some cover," Midoriya said as he ran towards their final opponent. While he was running, Mineta and Aoyama were providing cover fire for him towards their enemy. The other individual found their movement curtailed, and before they could even do anything, Midoriya fired of one final smash right at him. A similar scene was now playing out in most of the other locations, with most teams having run into their counterparts. The battles were fierce, and a lot of the students, both heroes and villains, found that their enemies were at a similar strength to them. At this current moment, most of the battles had already taken place and the wins and losses were about evenly split between heroes and villains. "I guess I should start preparing. You should create some warm clothes," Izuku said as he and Yaoyorozu were walking in a random direction. "What do you mean?" Yaoyorozu was asking, but before she could even finish speaking, a drop of snow landed on her nose, and just like that, the first few drops of snow started falling. After seeing this scene, Yaoyorozu immediately created some warm clothes and put them on. She didn't say anything else and just started to ponder. She was really curious to see this quirk. Of course she could ask and he would certainly tell her what his quirk was. They were teammates after all, but she wanted to see it with her own eyes, and she had a feeling the time was near. As they were walking, Yaoyorozu felt a rush of wind pass by her, and when she looked to her side, Izuku was gone. Before she could even get her bearings, she heard and felt vibrations coming from the shelves to her right, and by sheer luck and instinct she leapt forward. Thanks for watching.